Hi, this is Ms. Hadi from Olympian High School. I'm here to help my students and Mr. Hammond's students learn about Traditions and Encounters, Chapter 17 by Dr. Bentley, The Foundations of Christian Society in Western Europe. But to really understand this chapter, there's a few things you need to know first. First of all, we're in the post-classical period, which is sometimes called the medieval period or the Middle Ages. So if you're lost on what that means, you can go all the way back to the beginning of when the post-classical period begins in your book, which is chapter 13, and there'll be a few pages there to explain to you some of the larger things that are happening after the classical period. So historians usually divide up history into a lot of different ways, but for our purposes, you have ancient history, the classical period, and then you have the post-classical or after the classical period, and then you have modern times, and that can be split up even further into different eras depending on what historians see as changes, turning points, and the lens that they wear. So in world history class, we try not to be Eurocentric, which is to overly focus on Europe. And so throughout the years that I've been teaching AP World History, the periodization has changed. For example, Dr. Bentley, if you look at the book, he starts his post-classical period 500 CE to 1500 CE. But that's not how we do it in AP World. In AP World, we do 600 CE to 1450 CE. So what I'm saying is there's a slight difference between the way your book does their periodization and between the way the class, or AP World History, the class through College Board, does their periodization. And they have it slightly different, but it's more or less around that same time. So post-classical for our class is 600 to 1450. Again, that's called the Middle Ages or medieval period. Especially when we talk about Europe, we talk about Japan, we tend to say the Middle Ages or medieval period, not so much the other places. One big thing I want you to know is Europe is going to be very similar to South Asia. The biggest state that's there today is India, so mostly India. So South Asia is a region that has many states, and we've studied India in chapter 16. So how is it similar? It's similar in that it's not going to see a centralized imperial state the way we saw, say, in the Dar al-Islam, which is the realm of Islam, which, by the way, Christendom is comparable. They're both like areas that have a specific religion. Well, kind of, because Dar al-Islam has states like the Umayyad and the Abbasid dynasty, but Christendom has different states, and in the West, it's going to be very decentralized. Okay, so that's a long-winded way to get to the point, which is that chapter 17 is very similar to India. So we're going to see Europe and India be very decentralized. Or if you looked at Japan's history, a little bit like Japan, so decentralized order, except we're going to see an attempt by Charlemagne to bring centralized imperial rule to Western Europe. So let's back up a little bit and let's review some things you should have learned in ancient world history. If you didn't take that class, that's okay. But first, I want you to know that when we say Western Europe, we mean this side. So remember, it goes west and then here's east. So think we, it's not ew, it's we, W-E instead of E-W. So this is Western Europe, the part on the west. And what you'll see is that all of Europe, Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and even parts of Africa, at one point belonged to the Roman Empire. But what you need to know, in case you didn't take ancient world history class, is that this western part is going to fall. And the eastern part will continue as the Byzantine Empire. They call themselves Romans, we call them the Byzantine. And then what you should remember, the larger historical context that's affecting everywhere in the post-classical period is the spread of a new religion called Islam. So Muslims are going to take over all of this part, they're going to take over Spain, as Al-Andalus, and they're going to try to push into what you think of as what is now called France, Gaul, but they're going to be checked by Charlemagne's grandfather, Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer. So Muslims would have spread into Europe even further had they not been stopped. So just make sure you know that the western part and the eastern part used to be connected as the Roman Empire. And then I want to show you guys, just so in case you didn't take ancient world, that when it was the Roman Empire, there were these Huns that were attacking, and they were part of a larger Central Asian migration. They put pressure on Germanic people, and then those Germanic people invaded into the western part of the Roman Empire. And then from there, the western part of the Roman Empire is going to develop into different kingdoms by these Germanic people. And so Mr. Hammond's going to touch on that a little bit, but this is a quick introduction to chapter 17. Enjoy the vignette about Charlemagne receiving a gift of Abu al-Abbas, the albino elephant, as a diplomatic gift from Harun al-Rashid. And enjoy the chapter.